Hello aspirants, looking at current affairs for 6th Jan. The news items which we have picked up from the Hindu are these 11. We'll discuss them in detail. The first one, Tamil Nadu staring at acute drinking water shortage. So the annual rainfall in Tamil Nadu this year has been very poor and it has resulted in the reservoirs going very low. Some reservoirs it is said to be at very low level, 11% of their storage. Even 5% of their storage is the status of reservoirs in Tamil Nadu presently. So now Tamil Nadu is contemplating asking for help from adjoining states. So Karnataka and Kerala are two upper riparian states which can assist Tamil Nadu. So if the dead storage which is there with Kerala, which is not used, can be passed on ahead. So through the dams it can be passed on ahead to Tamil Nadu so that the adjoining districts there can benefit. With Karnataka, the well-known dispute, Kaveri water dispute is known. So in that case too, Kaveri and Kolerun are the two rivers. If these waters here are released, the Mettur dam which is there in Tamil Nadu, so it is at very low capacity. So even if it has 11% storage in Mettur dam, it would be at least be beneficial for some frame of time. So that is what it is contemplating. Karnataka government has already been ordered by the Supreme Court to release 2000 cusecs of water per day. So that order is already there. So if Karnataka agrees to this order and adheres to this order, then Tamil Nadu's troubles can be eased. So that is in news. So we should know about the status of rainfall too. So Tamil Nadu, the southern states here receive rainfall even during the post-monsoon sessions, during winter. So these monsoons also have been poor. These rains have been poor. So this is the Kaveri river which we have seen quite often. This is the Mettur dam here in Tamil Nadu. Krishnarajasagar dam is in Karnataka. Then the next news item is government feedback unit under CBI scan. So this is regarding the Delhi government. So Aam Aadmi Party is in power. Chief Minister is Mr. Arvind Kejriwal. So this Chief Minister in Delhi had set up a special feedback unit in September 2015 in the Directorate of Vigilance. So there is a Vigilance Commission, Central Vigilance Commission, and there are these Directorates of Vigilance too at government union territory level. So Delhi has a special status. It is a union territory, but it is the national capital territory, and there is an elected government in Delhi. But then union territories are directly governed by the center. So the state governments are there which are under the center, but then state governments have significant powers. Union territories have no such powers. But out of the 7 union territories in India, there are 2 which have elected governments too. One is Delhi, the other one is Puducherry. So in such cases, what are the powers of the state governments then? So there is a little conflict here. So this issue has always been in the fore, especially since Aam Aadmi Party has come to power. So the Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Najib Jung, he's a former Lieutenant Governor, he's resigned now. So the relation between the Chief Minister and Lieutenant Governor were not cordial at all. And there have been many instances where it was seen that they were having a tussle. So this case is regarding that only. So this special feedback unit which was established by the Chief Minister, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, in Directorate of Vigilance was established without the permission of the Lieutenant Governor, without the knowledge of senior bureaucrats, and this feedback unit would directly communicate with the Chief Minister's office. And what was the function of this special feedback unit? It was to undertake all investigations into bribery cases where even senior bureaucrats are involved. Plus also it had the mandate to lay traps so that senior bureaucrats who are taking bribe are caught red-handed. So such was the mandate, but since it was done without the knowledge of the Lieutenant Governor, so it was not through the legal process. So there was this Shunglu panel which was set up by then Lieutenant Governor. So this Shunglu panel was headed by Mr. V.K. Shunglu, who is the former CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Also the other 2 members are, one is the ex-Chief Election Commissioner N. Gopal Swamy and the other member is ex-CVC, Central Vigilance Commissioner Pradeep Kumar. So this high-level panel was established in August 2016 to look into this. There were around 400 files on decisions taken by the AAP government which were given to the panel to examine because there were irregularities in this decisions. So that was the body. you should not confuse this Shunglu panel with the Shunglu panel which has been established to look into the Commonwealth Games scam. So same CAG VK Shunglu has been heading another panel which is looking into Commonwealth Games scam. So that is different. But yes, presently the news is that CBI has registered a case on this issue. So it is undertaking preliminary investigation on this special feedback unit which was established. So the Shunglu panel will still give its viewpoints, but CBI case preliminary inquiry has been initiated. Also other cases too, CBI has initiated inquiries like irregularities in the functioning of Delhi Waqf Board were also put forth by the former Lieutenant Governor. So on that also CBI has initiated inquiries. A case has been registered. Then the next news item is Supreme Court asked to resolve conflict over rape definition in 2 laws. So definition of rape which is mentioned in Indian Penal Code 2, plus the government has recently passed a new law which is POCSO, that is Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, POCSO Act of 2012. So here the child is defined as anybody below 18 years of age. But in case of IPC under section 375, under this section, if the man is married to an underage girl, means the girl has not completed 18 years of age. So even if she's 15 years old and she's the wife of that man, then he goes scot free and there are no rape charges put against him, because here child, even married child at 15 years of age is not considered as an underage but considered as an adult and no action is taken. So child marriage is prevalent in India and it is a crime, but yet it is widely prevalent. By one report of United Nations, it is estimated that 47% of children in India are married off before they turn 18 years of age. So if this is a fact, and of course girls are of much younger age, so if they are having early marriages and then forced sex or sex as such is also indulged in, then there is no rape charges enforced in such cases. So this is section 375, which is completely violating what is mentioned in POCSO Act of 2012. So there is a conflict here. So there is a petition filed by Nobel Peace Prize winner Mr. Kailash Satyarthi, who has his organization Bachpan Bachao Andolan. So it has appealed to the Supreme Court to look into this matter and end this crime against children which is undertaken because of this inconsistency. The Supreme Court has directed the government, because these are 2 laws. So laws have to be modified by the government accordingly. So it has asked the government to address this issue within 4 months. And it has also told Mr. Kailash Satyarthi that if he is not satisfied with the action taken by the government, then he can again approach the Supreme Court on this. So this action is important because such acts result in loss of childhood. Because this is a very young age, and at this age if children who are not able to take a decision for themselves because they are not adult yet, so there is a need to safeguard the childhood. That is why this petition is of significance. So this is regarding the POCSO Act 2, the Protection of Children Against Sexual Offences Act. So here sexual offences against children have been given special attention. So that is what this act significance is about. So it takes into consideration all offences, and there are imprisonments, varying degrees of imprisonment based on the offence, like sexual assault, sexual harassment, pornography, all such are taken into consideration in this act. Then the next news item is, how will Election Commission decide on the party symbol row in Samajwadi Party? So in Samajwadi Party case, we have discussed this yesterday too, that regarding the symbol, the cycle symbol, it is claimed by both factions. So Samajwadi Party has split. Akhilesh Yadav and Mulayam Singh Yadav, the father-son duo, have split, and they are each claiming that they are the actual Samajwadi Party having the majority support on the legislative and organizational membership side. So the Election Commission will look into this matter, and the decision of the Election Commission would be final. But in the meanwhile, we have seen that the elections have already been scheduled for Uttar Pradesh. So now the decision cannot be quickly coming forth, because it will take some time for the Election Commission to look into the whole matter. So it will look into the entire constitution of Samajwadi Party, about its organizational structure and membership, and how many members are there which are claimed by on each side. So even at the legislative side, means as MPs and MLAs, how many Samajwadi Party members are there with each faction. So all that will be taken into consideration, and post that election commission will come to a conclusion whether which party is having the majority and should get the actual original symbol, the bicycle of Samajwadi Party. So this decision would be taken. If the election commission is not able to come to a clear conclusion whether which side faction is having the majority, that it can reject the symbol for both the political parties and ask each of them to have a new name for their party and a new symbol. So such actions have also been taken by the election commission earlier, and such actions may take place even presently. In the meanwhile, since the elections are scheduled at such an early phase, it's too late now for the election commission to take a decision. Then in such a scenario, again each party would be asked to have its separate symbol registered, plus be registered at separate political parties. So this can be done by the election commission. Also at a later date, if the two factions decide or any merger takes place of political parties, all that is also approved by the election commission. So election commission is the independent authority mandated by with all these aspects. So that is been mentioned here. So it's election symbols reservation and allotment order of 1968, which empowers the election commission to recognize political parties and allot symbols to them. So this is their function is already there in the constitution itself too, plus this order specifically mandates it. Then the next news item is, with gifts and goodwill, 218 fishermen return from Pakistan. So Pakistan has released 218 Indian fishermen who had been detained by it in the last 12 months. So this is because India and Pakistan are neighbors. So even the territorial waters, the maritime boundaries also are close to each other. So there are instances when fishermen move ahead and enter into territory or waters of Pakistan. So in such cases, Indian fishermen are caught by Pakistan, and the vice versa also happens, that Pakistani fishermen are caught by Indian Coast Guard forces. So such things have already earlier taken place too, and these fishermen as a goodwill gesture are generally released as well. So that is what Pakistan has done. It has released 218 Indian fishermen presently. Even in December 2016, just less than a month back, 220 Indian fishermen were also released. Then another aspect is that Pakistan now is coming forth and is wanting peaceful resolution of the dispute between India and Pakistan. The relations had aggravated post the Uri terror attacks and the Indian surgical strikes which were undertaken. So now let's wait and watch what happens between India and Pakistan too. Then the next news item is, in poll run-up, no bets on budget. So this is regarding the budget session, which it starts off in the end of Feb. So around 28th Feb or so, last week of Feb, that the budget starts off. But presently from this year onwards, there is a suggestion that budget should be preponed. So this preponement decision had been taken by the central government, and it would start off from the first week of Feb itself, from 1st of Feb or so. So if it starts early and the elections have been scheduled by the election commission, we saw 2 days back that the dates have come out. So it will take place from 8 Feb to 7 March, around a month of elections which are scheduled in the 5 states, state legislative assembly elections: UP, Uttarakhand, Manipur, Goa and Punjab. So these elections will clash with the budget session. So in the budget, if any such announcements are made, then it actually violates the model code of conduct too. So how will that clash be resolved is a question. Even earlier too, in 2012 or 14, when such a thing had happened, the election commission had asked the budget to be delayed. But presently the central government has said that there is no need to postpone the budget presentation, otherwise developmental works in other states are affected. So that is the justification given by the center, that they want to adhere to the preponed date which they have decided. So that is the center stand. But what would be the election commission's decision, we'll have to wait and watch, because election commission actually is an independent body and it will decide whether model code of conduct is violated or not, and whether the budget session has to be postponed. So that is the thing. So it's mentioned here, see, budget presentation was deferred during the 2012 assembly polls. It was presented after the elections. So this is required because model code of conduct also, as we have seen, if some such announcements are made, schemes are announced, then people are influenced by that and that political party, and then it will not result in a just and fair elections. So that is why model code of conduct is generally put into effect. So we'll wait and watch what is the Election Commission's decision on this matter too. It will be news again. The next news item is Sri Lanka Task Force seeks hybrid war crimes court. So in Sri Lanka, the LTT, war against LTT came to its conclusion. The Sri Lankan government was able to successfully eliminate LTTE, Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. So they were prominent in northern and eastern provinces of Sri Lanka, and here Tamils, which are a minority in Sri Lanka, are concentrated. So there were atrocities committed by both sides. So LTT was as good as a terrorist organization for Sri Lanka. So there were atrocities committed by LTT, which are evident too, plus Sinhala, the majority population of Sri Lanka, it has also committed atrocities. So there's a need for reconciliation now after the civil war is over. So that reconciliatory process is difficult. So there has already been a commission set up on this, and now there is a consultation task force, CTF, which has been set up in Jan 2016, a year ago, by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. So this consultation task force work is to seek national views on the reconciliation mechanism. That what are the views of the people, so that it is acceptable to the people and they take it up wholeheartedly. They have trust in the reconciliation process. So what has come out from these discussions and viewpoints which have been taken is this task force says that people want international observers involved in this, because without that it is difficult to have trust in the reconciliation process. So that is something which the Sri Lankan government has completely refuted to have, that there can be no international judges involved in prosecution for war crimes. So there will be no international judges. So then how would this go ahead is difficult to understand. So what are the points put forth were the UNHRC resolution, United Nations Human Rights Commission resolution, which was passed in 2015, which was co-sponsored by Sri Lanka itself. So this resolution spoke of 4 mechanisms for reconciliation. So these 4 mechanisms are truth, justice, reconciliation and non-recurrence. So there should be truth coming out, justice conferred, plus reconciliation process initiated and non-recurrence. That same thing should not happen again. So that one. Second is Office of Missing Persons. So there are many missing persons, especially Tamils, who are found missing. Suddenly there are no traces of them. So this Office of Missing Persons is required, because then this creates fear amongst the minorities, and then the trust on the government is reduced. Third is Office of Reparations, that the differences which are there, that are ended. Fourth is judicial mechanism with special counsel. So there is a need for adjudication on these war crimes. So there should be a judicial mechanism in place. But then, as said, international judges would not be allowed. That is the clear viewpoint of the Sri Lankan government. Both the president and the prime minister have made this clear. So of course the task force says, comprehensive task force says that without that there will be no trust building which will occur, and the entire reconciliation process would fail. So that is its point of view, which it has clearly put forth. Other aspects which it has highlighted is requirement for constitutional reforms to uphold the rights of the minorities, plus return of private land which has been occupied by the armed forces, the livelihood opportunities which have to be given to this population, their work needs to be done. Also the Sri Lankan law, Prevention of Terrorism Act, which is still in force and is in use, which is still applied as well, that is creating fears amongst the Tamils. So there is a requirement to bring in justice, and which should be clearly evident. So only then reconciliation is possible. Also it is said that perpetrators of these atrocities are on both sides. The police, the armed forces, even the Indian peacekeeping forces who were stationed in Sri Lanka during the time of Rajiv Gandhi from 1987 to 1990. Even they are indicted of having committed atrocities, plus the Tamil side has also committed atrocities. So this has also been clearly put forth in this comprehensive task force report. The next news item is new norms likely for top PSU posts. So this is Banks Board Bureau, which has been established less than a year ago. It is headed by former Comptroller and Auditor General of India, Mr. Vinod Rai. So this Banks Board Bureau's mandate is to look into the leadership roles of all state-run banks, means government-run PSUs, basically public sector banks, plus also looking into the accountability about their non-performing assets, making them viable, plus also appointments at the top levels. So for that also, how appointments should be made, how compensation should be provided to bank employees. On all these aspects, the viewpoints have been put forth now. So this Banks Board Bureau Chief Chairman, Mr. Vinod Rai, says that there is a need for a variable component in the pay of employees, bank employees throughout, not just at the senior and middle level, but also at all levels. That the variable component should be there, and this component means there is a fixed pay and a variable pay, and this variable pay component should be dependent on the performance. So only then banks can be made to function effectively. So that is one aspect, one decision which they have taken. Also various appointments, top level post appointments, it is such a point of view which has been put forth is that only people who have at least 6 years before they retire will be handed over the top post. Because if there is a very low tenure, a very small tenure, then it becomes difficult to trust accountability. Because after the decision has been taken, the person has retired. So the decision's effect would be seen after some time. So till that time, the person has retired. So that is why to be able to fix accountability effectively, it is required that people with sufficient tenure are only appointed at such top posts. Even the appointment to such top posts will be undertaken by this Banks Board Bureau presently. So that power has also been given to them. And then another aspect which is spoken of is the corporate debt restructuring cell. It is said that it was created with noble intentions in the 2000s, but then it has not been effective. There are huge volumes of stressed assets in the banking system, and there is a need to eliminate this, and only it would be possible only if banks function effectively. So it was seen that there have been many frauds committed by companies when they had fudged their balance sheets, inflated balance sheets, and manipulation of funds, all that done, and that had resulted in huge amount of loan taken by them, and then that has become an NPA with the public sector banks. Plus another aspect which is there is the irresponsibility and the laziness of the banking officials too, which has resulted in debts being given to them without sufficient inquiry and supervision. So all that is also an important aspect, because we see NPAs with public sector banks are quite high when compared to the private banks. So what is the reason for that? So banks themselves are to be blamed for that. To rectify this scenario, steps would now be taken. So all this is under the mandate of Banks Board Bureau. So this is the structure. The chairman is Mr. Vinod Rai. There are 3 members. Ex officio members means people who are already at some post. Because they are on that post, they are members of this Banks Board Bureau. A search committee which is appointed under it, because it is appointing officials too. So that is also having RBI governor as part of it. So that is the Banks Board Bureau. The next news item is Centre lifts green tape threat on new mines. So this was in news earlier too, that there are around 300 proposed mines which will become non-starters because they have been unable to secure environmental clearances in the 2 years time frame. So they were given this letter of intent to operate a mine by the state government in Jan 2012, Jan 2015, and now after 2 years. So this was valid for 2 years. So even within this 2 years time frame, they have not been able to get the environmental clearances. So under the new act, Mines and Mineral Development and Regulation Act of 2015, the mining rights, all mining rights have to be auctioned, and this letter of intent is valid only for 2 years. But since they have not got environmental clearance, they have not able to go ahead, and that's why they are under a dilemma. So this dilemma has been eliminated by the central government. It has said that they will be allowed to continue holding the letter of intent this provided to them, but they cannot start operation until and unless they get the environmental clearance. So this assurance has been given by the central government now. So this is a relief for all these mining firms which are facing difficulties because of not getting the environmental clearance. So that is the green tape which is spoken of. So this green tape threat now has been lifted. They are allowed to continue beyond this 2-year time frame to hold the letter of intent. The next news item is export infrastructure scheme on the anvil. So central government is planning to roll out a new scheme, TIES. So this is trade infrastructure for export scheme. So for export, there is requirement that infrastructure be in place, and infrastructure lacunae is clearly visible in India. So trade related infrastructure is not just the roadways and railways, but also apart from that, there is a need for setting up laboratories for testing, certification, packaging, labeling, because exports require, all these requirements are there as part of export procedure. So this facilities also should be established in states, and all states have not been able to come up to the mark on this. So to facilitate the states, central government is planning to roll out this scheme where they would be facilitated, because we see there are these measures called SPS measures, sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So these measures are related to sanitary, as you understand, is related to sanitation, is related to cleanliness. So all these aspects that, there are any bugs or, any such aspect involved in any food safety related aspects, means basically for animal and plant products. So all these health standards are put forth, because of which the export is rejected. The export consignment is rejected. So see, sanitary and phytosanitary measures are generally put forth by various countries, and Indian exports suffer. So to ensure that these measures are in place, the testing, certification laboratories, if these are in place, then it can be ensured and the exports will be better facilitated. Then another aspect is technical barriers to trade. So these are regarding the various standards which are imposed. So these are by various countries. They put forth their standards and norms, that these are the technical specifications which we need. So if there are these technical specifications are not fulfilled, then the export is not allowed. So that becomes a technical barrier to trade. So to ensure that these barriers do not come in our way and exports from India are in demand facilitated, there is a need for establishing trade infrastructure. So that is the whole thing all about. So apart from, of course, roads in India, roads carry nearly 65% of cargo against the global trend where railways is a major contributor. So of course, roads, railways development is also important, but apart from that, these other aspects should also be highlighted. So here the government is going to work, central and state government plan to work together. Also, the central government has said that we will bring out a logistics performance index. So it will rank states based on the steps taken by them to facilitate trade and improve logistics. So logistics is with respect to the movement of commodities. So how that whole thing is facilitated. So this will be an index which would be put forth. So that is mentioned here. Also another aspect which has been highlighted by the by the Economic Commerce Ministry is that we have our traditional exports which are doing well, especially with respect to services. So export of services is only in certain countries like Europe and EU. So if we expand ourselves in other countries, we would not be suffering highly because of changes in the policies and laws of these specific countries. So that's why expansion of our export areas geographically is required. Plus also in terms of sectors, that we are mastering IT and IT enabled services only with respect to some areas. So newly emerging areas like medical tourism, nursing and hospitality, healthcare, education, audiovisual media, all these are also service sectors. So these service sectors exports also have a potential which India should develop. So that is also highlighted. And the last news item is Israel harnessing sunshine with world's tallest solar tower. So renewable sources of energy in Israel presently is 2.5%, but it plans to generate 10% of its energy from renewables by 2020. So this is been achieved by establishing a huge solar project. This is Ashalim project. But what is important here is the solar tower which they have established. This will be the world's tallest solar tower. So what is a solar tower and how is it different from solar photovoltaic panels which are put forth? So in solar photovoltaic panels, what happens is directly solar energy is converted into electricity. But in case of solar towers, so for the direct conversion of solar energy into electricity does not take place. This is the whole process that is shown here. So this is the heliostat. So these are mirrors which are placed all around the tower. So these are called heliostats. So these solar rays fall on them and they are concentrated because of these mirrors and go the solar receiver, the boiler is placed here. So this water converted into steam runs the turbines, and the turbines because of this thermal energy is generated, which is stored, and then later it can be connected as an electricity through the grid. So this is a solar tower. So this is a difference between a solar photovoltaic cell and a solar tower. The way this is called solar thermal methods of generation of electricity. So this is the largest solar tower which will be established in Israel now. So that is here. So these are the news items for today. Thank you.